It's always like your birthday with a package from China, so let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. So in this video we are going to take a close look at the Super Console X2 Pro Edition. So in the previous videos I'd even made like an update video about this product because I also made a brain fart. So with the previous version, like it was a kind of weird situation that we have like a system inside the box, and kind of weird was like also when you're looking at the chip and the specs, it doesn't make any sense. Of course, with the typical, let's say, system, we're also going to get ourselves like a little bit better quality, the PlayStation 2 knockoff 2.4 GHz controllers. I must say, in overall, the controllers are not bad at all this time. We do have like an okay D-pad, and we do have like rubberized joysticks over here. So when it comes to the joysticks, I really like it. It's kind of funny that they nowadays like add a sticker to it for the one USB receiver can connect with both gamepads at the same time. Yeah boys, man, it's absolutely like freaking magic. That's what's happening because there's only one dongle in here. And I think it's a very convenient thing because you only need like basically 2 dongles and 4 controller if you want to have like a 4 controller gamepad configuration. And then we have like 2 AAA batteries and then you just slap inside of this thing. So let's get myself some batteries. So before we go into connect this thing, where are those batteries? But this is what we're going to get in the second box. A power supply, HDMI cable, USB hub and the remote, because this thing is actually an Android box. So if you're going to remove the SD card, and the SD card is over here, you will boot up into Android 9.0. And over when you're going to take a close look at the Android box itself, it also says over here like we're going to get Android 9.0 and EmuElec 4.5. EmuElec can just basically download it, and you can basically like download for free and put it on Android box. So take consideration that is something you can do yourself. Then we like the Super Console X2 Pro manual and have the explanation how you need to add your files and all the other mumbo jumbo. Basically like a lot of tutorials on the web where you can check it out also, but also this manual is very extended. I must say, give them extra kudos for that. And then we're going to get ourselves like a cheap 4GB SD card. And what I understand of here, we do have like some video files, also explanation tutorials how everything works. But let's talk about the X2 Pro Edition, because this is not the same product that we have seen before. So when you're looking at the older model over here, you do see like the case is completely different, but also the connections do have like some minor differences. And also when you're going to put them side by side, the Pro version is way bigger. So at the side we're going to get ourselves the micro SD slot and 2 USB ports. So with the normal version we don't have a micro USB port at all, we're only having like 2 USB connections. The connections at the back are basically the same, only in a different position. So when you're looking at the new version, we do have like an AV out, HDMI, LAN function, 12 volt 1 amp like input, and of course the on and off switch. And the on and off switch, that is not something really new. With the first model, like the first really Super Consoles, we also have like an on and off switch, but the on and off switch is a little bit of a problem in general when it comes to Android boxes. I think it's very cool to have one. The conclusion is the X2 Pro is absolutely like great, like it's way better than the normal version, and particularly when looking at the housing itself, it's a little bit bigger, but also when you're looking at like the micro SD card that's inside the machine, I found it a little bit of annoying that you need to use a card reader with the old version. Nevertheless, like let's take a close look at this thing and just what are we going to get? But let's take a close look at the menu itself. I must say I really like this new layout. I think this was in the UI. I think the UI is like the EmuElec new or something like that it's called. Nevertheless, we have like all kinds of different like categories. Like also implemented a lot of old school stuff. Think about Commodore 64, the MSX, but also Amiga, PC Engine. But the thing is like when it comes to these systems, take consideration we do have some limitation because these things will have, for example, N64, but we will have problems with some emulation. I've noticed also with 3DO we do have like some mixed, let's say, performance. And that is a little bit of a bummer with these things. We do have limitations, especially when it comes to the specifications. But let's take a close look at some high-end stuff and also some two-dimensional stuff. And I'll show you what I mean with it, what you're going to get. But let's go into the menu, because we can basically like switch out a lot of things if you have problems. So with the menu here, we're like game settings. Here we can basically like set the aspect ratio. You can mess around with bezels. So here we like even the option to make an auto save and load function. So you would like just look around with it. Like the UI can be set like here we have the new EmuElec. This is the new theme. I personally really like it. So here we can switch out a lot of stuff with the UI, sound settings, controllers. If you need to like controller mapping, if you have problems with this, you can go in here and mess around with it. I'm not going to do it now. There's like tutorials out there that have like completely like explanation how you need to do it. But there is so much stuff you can switch out with EmuElec in general. Okay, so when it comes to MAME, we do have like a lot of stuff you can play. Of course, Kill Instinct doesn't run on this box, so that's a little bit unfortunate. Another thing they accidentally, I think, messed up. When pressing start, we're going to have like player 2 and player 1 set to the same controller. That's unfortunately the same issue we had with the previous, like say, box. So that's something you should fix in the RetroArch itself, or reconfigure the controls. So it is a little bit of a bummer, something like it happens, but we can control 2 characters at the same time. It's kind of funny, to be honest. Pressing the both joystick will give you like the option to make a quick load, quick save with MAME. So that is something you can do, or just go out of it. Or pressing select to start and reset the system. But if you're going to be implementing, let's say, new options, you can go to the advanced option by holding the A for a couple of seconds. Over here, what you basically can do is like switch out the emulator. So let's say we're going to the MAME 2010 if you're having problems. Then we have like aspect ratio can be configured, core provided, or full or square pixel 1:1. Like there are like all of kinds of options they can implement in here. Unfortunate, like we did notice, like we have some issues with the like widescreen. So what you can do, for example, we can mess around with it so much. For example, like implement bezels and mess around with the, let's say, configuration of the emulator, just to see if we can get a little bit better performance, and also the 2-player option problem. Alright, so next up, let's try the same game again, and we did try to mess around with the emulator, and it seems to be working for the bezels. And also, we don't have the issues anymore with the controllers. I think the main problem we had with this is because we're having the different emulator, because we have like one dongle for basically 2 wireless controllers, and some emulators cannot really handle it. So when pressing start on one player, it basically shows both players. So it's more like a problem with the controls that we're using in combination with the emulator. And of course this looks so much better when we have bezels enabled with the MAME emulator 2010. Walk it to my fist. Alright, so next up, let's try Super NES. Another system that runs perfectly or basically flawlessly on a device like this without any problems. Also, the bezels have been implemented automatically, and again, like if you have problems, you can just mess around with it. The same goes with the controllers. But I've noticed, like, what have like these cheap like boxes I've reviewed back in the day had so many issues with this. These like Android boxes are way more powerful, and EmuElec software is so much better nowadays that we don't have like any weird audio delay or whatsoever. So next up, let's try a little bit of GoldenEye. And yeah, this is a game and also a system that doesn't run great on these boxes. You can see like we do have like a shitload of glitches. Maybe we can fix it. So for once, I must say that it seems to be that they didn't mess it up with the controller like the previous time. The overall performance, we have some minor hiccups. You can mess around with the emulator if you want to get some better performance. The same thing that I've shown you before with MAME. But again, like I would not expect to have like way better performance in general when it comes to this. Maybe less glitching, maybe most of the time I have less performance and less FPS. Another thing I wanted to show you, pressing both joysticks at the same time, we do have like the option to mess around with RetroArch. So it's basically like a quick way to get into this. So here we can do like a lot of cool things. Sometimes even like making quick load, quick save. But just here we can also close the content and just go back to the main menu. Alright, so next up let's try a little bit of a Thomas Wave, a system that will have sometimes little hiccups here and there. But with the box of this, even despite the power that it has, we do have the option to play a couple of these games. Let's get into the hard part. Let's see how it emulates, how it keeps up. With the cheap S905 box, we always have problems, but with the S905, like the better boxes, we do have like way better performance, what you can see over here. Do have like some minor dips, but nothing like really to worry about. Alright, so let's take a close look at Sega Saturn, and I must say that Saturn is a quite freaking miracle in my opinion that it works actually on the box like this. The overall performance is pretty damn good, but take consideration like games like Panzer the Dragoon will not run perfectly, or better said, it runs most of the time pretty damn shitty. We need to have just more power, so it's more like a mix, like with N64. Some games run okay, some games will run absolutely horrible. And with this Super Speedway, weird looking Wipeout rip-off, I personally really hate this game, is that it runs pretty damn good. What I do like about it is the music. Another problem I'm having with these, let's say, boxes sometimes, that we have like when you're booting up a game, and you just want to test something out, it doesn't boot up into the game itself. It's a major problem, and that is something you need to take consideration. Like sometimes they are like completely messed up. Here you can see it boots up into the Flycast emulator. When you want to need to get booting into the game, nothing happens, and that's it. Let's try a different one. Okay, so next up, let's try some Sega Dreamcast gaming. And I must say, when you're looking at the FPS, you can see it dipping to 40 sometimes, but in my opinion, it doesn't really bother me. Now you can see the numbers, then you will notice it, but when you're actually playing it, I don't really notice it at all. But it will like a great indication that the system combination with the Flycast emulator is not a great fit on this chipset. But again, most of the Dreamcast game will be playable. Alright, so let's get into Sega Naomi, and the reason why, because this is a very difficult emulator, especially with these cheap boxes. You can see like the same story with this, is that we have like dips to 40, but with some games you will notice it. But the overall performance is not bad at all. Dead Alive is a very demanding game, so that's the reason basically I choose this game to try on this system, just to see how it runs. It's not getting into the 60, a little bit of a bummer, but again, I personally don't really notice it if the numbers are not there in the corner. Okay, so PlayStation Portable is in my opinion just a no-go. We'd have like some two-dimensional stuff that will run on this, but the general like stuff that is absolutely like unplayable. So pressing select will bring us in the menu. The only thing is like, basically like now A is basically cross, so I think I can navigate to the menu like this. So what you can do basically is like mess around with the frame skip. It's already have been set to 1. So let's see what we can do with it. If we can get some better performance. Rendering resolution, we can set it to 1 times PSP. That will help always. And let's see. So we have like better buffer graphics command, faster and better performance. And there we see we can speed up. So you can also see how they're implementing this too. So there's not a lot of stuff you can change out because they basically did it already. So a little bit of a bummer in my opinion. Okay, let's go back and let's see how the overall performance is with this. And again, you can do it with every single game. Also make a quick load, quick save. Really like it. They can do this. But again, yeah, we do have so many limitations when it comes to PlayStation Portable and this chipset, or better said, this box. So I just wanted to check it out in the main menu, not even starting the game. You can see this thing runs around like 30 frames. It's absolutely unplayable. And this is something we will notice when it comes to these devices and PlayStation Portable. So we just need to have way more power to run this. So PlayStation Portable, they should like remove it at all because it's pointless. Where we have like so many stuff that we can play, when it comes to 3DO, there we have like a different story. It's similar to, let's say, the PlayStation Time era, but you can see like with the FPS, 41 FPS, and it's not playable in my opinion, especially when you're listening to the audio. It has like this annoying crackling sound, and 3DO, some two-dimensional games are playable, but in overall, like it's absolutely no-go with these cheap devices too. I don't want to be super negative when it comes to this system, but I just want to point out, let's say, what kind of stuff isn't like available to run on this. Yeah, it is on the system, or you can add it to the system, but take consideration EmuElec is basically a software you can put on different kind of boxes with different kind of chipsets. So if you're going to get yourself like a GT King or a 922X, like we have so much more stuff that you can play, and some of them will run way better. But again, I think if you want to look into PlayStation Portable, we should like check out like mini PCs because they are like more powerful to run more like that kind of stuff. But for two-dimensional stuff, 8-bit, 16-bit, it runs pretty damn cool. Like it runs perfectly in my opinion. So there's still so much stuff that we can actually play on this. Alright, so let's do a little bit of a rip and tear, and the first thing I did notice when grabbing this system, yeah, it's a little bit bigger than the normal or the no pro version, but I did notice like this thing feels way cheaper. So I'm really curious what kind of, let's say, stuff are we going to find in the inside, not only the chipset itself, but also when it comes to the, let's say, the overall cooling performance, because this is like a general problem when it comes to these boxes. So let's remove the 3 screws that holds everything together, and I'm guessing I need to get my prier tool to basically like pry this thing open, because it's a lot of plastic fantastic at the moment, and so far I didn't hear any fans, so I'm guessing this is a passive cool or something like that. Alright, so let's remove the SD card, because sometimes if you're going to open it up and you accidentally don't remove it, you can basically like crack your SD card, so that is something you need to take consideration. They're using the extreme speed, like it looks like a SanDisk clone or something, or it has like the color palettes, but yeah, kind of weird. But that's the thing, like always back up these things. Let's get myself like a pry tool, because I cannot do this with my nail. Alright, so let's open it up, and I must say they're using very flexible plastic, and with the plastic like this you can open it up fairly easy. So the first thing, like, they're using a very big metal plate for giving a little bit of better cooling. There's no active fan, a little bit of bummer because I love these active fans with big cooling elements. Nevertheless, you can see like the thermal pad is not positioned correctly, and you can also see it over here when it comes to the chipset itself, because you can see it like not making the perfect, let's say, overall, like, say, touch. So that is not great because we don't have like the best thermal cooling over here. So what, you know what's kind of weird with this, like with these chips you're using, like the chips you're using, you can really see it, they're having the EmuElec S95L in here, and it's the same story like the previous one. So it's kind of weird, to be honest, because when you're looking it up, like the S95L is just a different chip. But let's try to check into, let's say, Android. Let's check AIDA64 and let's see what we're going to get with the specs, because it seems to be like they're doing some weird stuff with chips, or, you know, like, to be honest, it's weird. Let's say that. At least, it's weird. But the first thing that we need to do is put the thermal pad on here, so it will have like the best, let's say, contact with the cooling element. Yeah, I wish I could like add some more, because I think if you're going to use more thermal pads, you can basically get some better cooling for the RAM chip and the flash chip over here. But yeah, whatever. I don't pay a lot of attention to Android because it is nothing really cool. Like, it's just Android 9.0, and also we haven't rooted the device, so Netflix cannot be playing on 1080p or 4K. So for that part, in my opinion, it's not really interesting. We can still watch 4K YouTube, but with these boxes, it's not a great experience. Alright, so we can add, let's say, new apps to this. So what we're going to install is through the USB, we're going to install some AIDA64. The reason why, because I wanted to check the specifications. So, you know, the S95L is just an old quad core, and I think it was with the MP450, if I'm thinking correctly, with the GPU. By getting into the AIDA64, it shows the S95 X2. So also it's kind of weird because most of the boxes running on X3 nowadays. So when you're looking at overall specifications, 2 GB of RAM, so they didn't lie about that. The CPU is an ARM Cortex A53 1800 MHz, it's a quad core, so it has like 4 CPU cores. Let's check the display. We're having a Mali G31 on here. So the GPU is a little bit better than the, let's say, the first generation Super Console X. Then we have Android 9 over here, and it is rooted, already mentioned, so we cannot watch Netflix, Full HD and 4K, and of course the thermals. I must say, like, when you're looking at the thermals, it's not bad at all. It's getting some good performance, way better than the first generation. But when you're looking at these devices, it's more of the same. So when you're just tuning in, this is maybe something exciting and something new. But when you're looking into the jungle of game boxes, it's absolutely more the same stuff. The X2 Pro, there is, in my opinion, nothing really pro about it. We have a different case, and of course we have now finally like the option to have like a microSD put in the system. But beside that, like, there's not a lot of an improvement. I want to thank you for watching. Consider subscribing. Let me know in the comments what you think of this, and it would be great to see you in the next video.